Welcome. Today we are going to discuss the 13 colonies. We are going to learn the names and category for each colony and also come to understand what makes each category or grouping unique. So to that end, we will be looking at our precise charts. Be sure you have a blank chart handy so that you can fill in information about the groups, about the colonies as we go. My recommendation is that you have a blank chart for each category. So what are the categories? We're looking at 3 distinct colonial groupings when it comes to the 13 colonies. We're looking at the New England colonies, which you can see outlined there in orange. We're looking at the middle colonies, outlined in green. The middle colonies are also often referred to as the breadbasket grouping of colonies, which should give us a clue about their goals and their sort of economic contributions. And then you also have the southern colonies, and within that a smaller group, the Chesapeake colonies. Each one of these categories is going to have its own flavor, its own personality, its own place, if you will, in the New World. And so we're going to take a few minutes to go through each. And as we discuss them, again, I just want to remind you that it would be a good idea to label things in your precise chart as we go. In addition to that previous map that I shared with you, where you just saw the outlines, so this, I also wanted to share a filled in map so that you can see where each colony, ultimately state, but right now we're speaking colony, is going to be. So up here you're going to have Massachusetts, and notice Massachusetts is in here twice. Maine does not exist yet, but Maine will come later, right, as a state. You have also New Hampshire up here and New York, but we know that they don't actually butt up against each other today, so later we will also have Vermont. So each of these names of colonies are filled in here, and then if we click further, we will also see them placed in their proper category. So just wanted to have a variety of visuals available for you guys depending on how you learn best. So New England colonies are going to consist of Massachusetts, New Hampshire, Rhode Island, Connecticut. The middle colonies are going to be New York, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Delaware. The southern colonies are going to be Maryland, Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, and finally Georgia. And if you notice, what is under here, this is going to be Spain. Let me make that a little easier to see for y'all. This is going to be a Spanish colony down here, right? We know that's Florida. And then also over here is going to be Native American territory, which we of course will add as we go further. But this is sort of the context or the backdrop here for these American colonies. Here's the grouping again. And now I want us to discuss precise. So if we think just a moment about what the precise chart is, we know that it stands for political, religious, economic, cultural, intellectual, social or societal, and environmental. Environmental is going to be a lot of geography, of course, but then also issues related to how humans use natural resources. So keep that in mind. And I know that we've been over what the precise chart stands for. So what I want us to do now is to look at some qualities of, specifically at first, the New England colonies, and then I will allow you to go through and decide where these qualities lie. So first of all, it's important to know that they are making money through shipbuilding, which if you think about where they are geographically, that makes sense, right? So shipbuilding is going to be a way of making money. They're also going to be engaged in trade. Their soil is very rocky. It's a hard soil. So we are going to have an absence of cash crops. So no cash crops like we might see elsewhere. A little spoiler alert, maybe in the southern colonies. But we do see subsistence farming. Subsistence farming means that you are growing enough to support your family, but not enough to supply your entire community just with your farm or to sell, to trade in some way to make money. They will also have access to livestock. So you see that. You see pigs, horses, you see sheep, and you see fishing. Again, thinking about the geography. In terms of the people that live there, they're going to come as families. This is important. They're coming as families to settle, which means they're forming communities. You don't see, although you do see some, you don't see a large amount of young men who are single coming over to sort of seek their fortune or tame the rough and wild wilderness. They are bringing families, they're bringing women and children, which means they're bringing religion. And they are also going to be motivated by religion, seeking, of course, some religious freedom. They don't live, or they do live longer, than a lot of other colonial groups that we're going to look at. They have an average lifespan of 70 years old. And because they are bringing families, the population of the New England colonies is going to grow faster than colonial groups that are only sending single men. In terms of children, they're having about 10 kids per family. They're fairly educated and literate. And the only way to have a personal relationship with God is to be able to read the scripture, right? According to a lot of these groups. So reading to that end is important. In terms of governing, we want to remember the Mayflower Compact. They're going to agree how government will look, what government will look like while they are still on board the ship. So you'll have town hall meetings, you'll have voting that's based on membership within the church. They are Puritans, right? Religion is going to dictate all aspects of life, from education to governing bodies, even their work ethic. Major events we want to remember would be the Salem witch trials. We want to think about a man named John Winthrop and a text called City Upon a Hill, all of which we will delve deeper into later on. So now I'd like to look at some precise information for the middle colonies or the breadbasket colonies. And again, like I mentioned, the idea of a breadbasket should give us a really good idea about what you might be able to fill in for the economic portion of the precise chart. They are a major trade center. And again, if you look at the coastline that they're on, you'll see that it's seaport trade. It makes sense. They are densely populated, which means they are living a more urban type of lifestyle. So there are specialized craftsmen. You're seeing iron workers. You're seeing ship builders. You're seeing blacksmiths. They're not spreading out on farms. They're dwelling in city centers. The soil is fertile. Yay for fertile soil, right? So there's lots of wheat, barley, corn. So we see a lot of agricultural growth, not just small subsistence farms. This is going to mean that there are farmers out there who can farm this fertile soil, who can feed the craftsmen who work in the city. So not every single person has to become a subsistence farmer. You are going to then allow for the growth of these specialty positions. The population is diverse. So we were just talking about the Puritans dominating the New England colonies. Here in the middle colonies, you see a lot of the Dutch, German, Scots, Irish, English, and French. And so you see a tolerance for different religious and cultural viewpoints. Governing, they're going to elect their own legislature. They are democratic. So I'm going to write that. In the sense that they have a governor, they have a governor's court, they have a court system. Government in the middle colonies is mainly proprietary. Proprietary means it's based on property rights. If you own property, you can participate in government. But remember that New York is going to start as a royal colony, something that we will discuss or have discussed. And so since they are a royal colony, some different rules apply in New York government. Culturally, we are going to see Quakers. You should always associate Quakers with the middle colonies. Remember William Penn, right? So the Quaker faith is the most prominent faith. Quakers tended to be anti-slavery based on their religious beliefs. Cities in Pennsylvania are also organized in a really interesting sort of grid pattern, right? So city blocks, think about that. Education, because of the craftsmen and the focus on that sort of lifestyle or that sort of economic pursuit, you start to see a lot of apprenticeships, guilds, which think of them as early unions. Children go to work with their parents, and so you have skills being passed down from generation to generation, as in, my father was a blacksmith, so I am a blacksmith. All right, so let's precise these southern colonies or these Chesapeake colonies. Before, when we were talking about New England, we said that they did not have cash crops, that they had subsistence farming. But in Chesapeake or in the southern colonies, that is not the case. They do have a cash crop system. A cash crop system means that you are going to focus on a couple highly profitable crops. But it also means that you're not growing food for your community all the time, right? You are also going to have to rely on trade to get food, because tobacco, for example, is a cash crop. That might be what you're selling or trading to make money, but that is not what you're feeding your family. So cash crops are things like tobacco, rice, cotton, indigo. This is going to be performed under a plantation system. Small subsistence farms do exist, but the money makers in terms of the cash crop system in the southern colonies are plantations, which are, of course, farmed or worked, I should say, using slave labor. 3/4 of the population is made up of indentured servants. These are people who come to the New World, given passage to the New World, with the sort of caveat that they will then work for the person who brought them or sponsored them. It's not the best way to explain it, but they have to work off a debt. Small percentages of wealthy landowners are going to control the majority of both the political and the economic power. So these are the people who are owning the plantations. They're the ones who are going to be making decisions in government, and they're the ones who are going to have all of the money. There is something called the House of Burgesses, which is founded in 1619 in Jamestown. It's pretty democratic, and so I wanted to make note of that. That's not going to apply to every single colony, but it is noteworthy within the Southern or Chesapeake colonies. There is a very small population of wealthy landowners, again, like I said, that are dominating life in the Southern colonies, but most of the population will be made up of indentured servants until something called Bacon's Rebellion. And at that point, you're going to see a shift from indentured servants to the use of enslaved Africans as the main source of labor. Because agriculture was the main economic focus, socializing is very difficult. Everyone is very far apart from each other, and so each plantation becomes almost like its own governing body. Georgia is really unique. It's a kind of social experiment. It's filled with debtors. They don't do very much work. They're successful, but Georgia is really founded as a place to send people who were filling up debtors' prisons in England, but they are also a buffer colony because they're the last colony before we hit Spain. So the idea was that let's protect our economic investments with the cash crops in the Carolinas, and we'll just fill Georgia with some debtors who can, work some subsistence agriculture. Only the wealthy in the southern colonies are educated. That is a real shift from what we see going on in New England. Boys are going to be sent to boarding school. They'll learn about how to own and run a plantation. Girls might be educated in finishing schools, what you might think of as charm schools. This is how they will learn to be a southern lady, how they'll learn various social graces, and how to run a home and run a house of slaves. Finishing schools are boarding schools are next to each other, and that's how they're going to meet and marry. So some key things, ID terms that we'll be coming back to are the headright system. Make sure you know and define these. And then also Bacon's Rebellion. All right, y'all, I want to wrap this up. I want to say thank you very much. Let me know if you have questions. Of course, email me. Email me. Also, work on those precise charts. You want to have 3, one for each of the categories, and then label your maps. Make sure you know where each colony falls. Label the name of the colony, and also then label the groups of the colonies. Take care.